Hey everybody, Jonathan Mark Mendes, Painted Love, and thank you for joining me in my tutorial today. As you can see, I've got the most glorious piece of furniture next to me, and it's been with me for some time, and every time I see it, I just think this whole piece screams of Mediterranean vibes. Those beautiful square apertures. It's definitely kind of Moroccan feeling. It's probably going to need lots of colour, so boho, farmhouse, Mediterranean, you name it, all of the above is going to go into this piece of furniture. I've studied YouTube for quite a while now, looking at those sort of techniques, and there is no hard and fast rules to this. Everybody has a different way of doing it, and I'm going to take you on the journey on how I create those looks on this gorgeous piece of furniture. So let's take a closer look at the piece of furniture before we start layering up the paint. So the theme for the piece of furniture, I'm going to take a little nod back to my family's heritage of being in Madeira, and the colourway of the old-fashioned buildings in Madeira was a colour that's very much like Amsterdam Green, which is kind of this colour. So dark green on the shutters and doors, which I think this kind of reminds me of that look. But over years of being bleached by the sun and faded and crackled chippy paint, it ends up a little bit like the cabinet that you see on the other side of the screen. It kind of gets a bit brighter and zestier. So we're going to mix Amsterdam Green with a blend of fur, and then ending up in another colour, a little hint of Tilton, which is a yellow. I will also be applying an undercoat of primer red. Now, that doesn't feature in these doors and shutters in Madeira, but I just kind of think that punch of red underneath, if we distress back to little hints of this, it will be gorgeous anyway. So slightly changing it up. I'll post some pictures right now, and you can see what I mean about the Madeira shutters and doors, and you can see how beautiful that paintwork is. To start this piece, ordinarily I would give it a good clean. Not in this case, not bothering, chalk paint straight over all of the dust that's accumulated from my workshop. It's only going to add to the overall look. I'm giving the primer red a good old mix or a shake, and pop the can lid. I'll give it a stir as well, just to make sure that it's a colour that I don't use very often. I want to make sure that all of the sediment is well incorporated. There you go, primer red. It's a colour that I don't use very often, but it's gorgeous. So the paintwork can be thick and thin. Don't worry, thin areas and thick blobby areas is good. And don't worry about getting full coverage, that's fine. Just any what way with your brush. I'm not going to paint the inside, I'm just going to literally paint the outside, and this is the canvas coat. In this case, I'm going over the hardware. I'm going to do a rust effect on that, I think, at some point, and maybe the hinges as well. So you can see there's little areas that I've missed. I'm not going to be too particular about where the paint sits. I'm not even thinking about it, really. I'm not even thinking about it. Let's put some paint on this side. I mean, you can see just here how, when this piece of furniture was made, how rough the actual stain was applied. So you can see those trickles. That's part of its character. So we want to incorporate sort of character like that back into the piece. So like I said, no rhyme or reason to this whatsoever. Just load up the paint, thick and thin, on this first layer. You can see, probably on the camera, it looks kind of very much, red is very like mahogany, and this is a mahogany sort of finish, so it doesn't show up that much, but already I do think it looks much better for seeing a bit of paint. Cross-hatching, thick and thin, no rhyme, no reason, just lay that paint up. This is one of those projects where you're not going to have to worry about anything when it comes to how you lay this paint on. It's not going to be a flat, perfect finish, so just literally have fun. Even the stray hairs probably could get away with leaving them in. I think I need a new brush. This one is losing all of its edge, but I do not like to chuck things away. So I'm saving this brush for the project that doesn't matter. So maybe on the corners, just that little bit heavy and stippled in. We don't want trickles of paint, that's for sure, but you just need thick and thin areas. All about adding those textural areas to work with. Look at all this dust. Can you see down here? Dust. I'm leaving it straight over the top. Texture, natural texture. Right, first coat on. Let's leave this to dry. It needs to dry really, really well before the second layer, and then we can move on to mapping out the next layer of colour. So in for a penny, in for a pound. Let's start with the Amsterdam Green. I'm going to start by applying a little bit to the legs. Again, I'm applying this loosely and quite heavily to the surface. And I'm working quite quickly. Might need to open that cabinet door just a little bit. And I want to work quick. It's warm in the workshop today and the paint will dry very, very quickly. So I'm going to work very quick because I'm going to do a wet on wet blend. So that means I'm trying to keep some moisture in the paint whilst working the next layer. So this is at the point where I'm going to change my colour. I'm going to go for faux, and this is going to go sort of at the top. So again, applying thick and thin areas, and I'm allowing the two to meet. So I'm going to get the paint, the majority of the areas that haven't got the Amsterdam Green on first. Layer a bit thick on that corner and this corner. So now I'm taking this furl down into some of the areas beneath and blending away. There's the odd spot here and there that I've hit the Amsterdam, but that's fine. These two greens blend so beautifully together. Into the crevices. Try not to miss anything around catches. Let's do that. There, close that. So now I'm going back with my actual furl from the can, just to add a bit more paint. Try not to miss any of the connections. The odd bit of primer red is quite nice to poke through. I'm going to lower this down a little bit. It feels like it should be a little bit more grungy down here. You can really see just how thick I've allowed this paint to be. I'm really not spreading it too much. I'm allowing it to sit into all of those crevices. I think right down the middle of that as well. Just a little bit heavier through the middle. And the odd touch just along the bottom and the edge of that corner. And we might just hit a little bit of the tilting in there just to lighten the edges, just that little bit tilting going down there and through the middle of these squares. And that is going to be a lot of paintwork to dry. So all I'm doing now is I've picked up my clean dry brush and I'm just blending slightly as these colours are beginning to slightly dry. Again, no rhyme or reason, just softening that blend just a little bit more to blend those colours together a little bit more seamlessly. I think I'm kind of happy with that. I just think a little bit more touch-ups of some Tilton here and there, just a little bit, so we've just got that real zestiness to the top half of here. So the blend at the bottom I'm happy with, feels good, and then I'm just adding little touches of the Tilton, sorry, fur, this is fur. It's kind of an acidy green colour. Here and there, along the edge, really adds some sort of drama. Pick out little areas. Blend that away from the edge. That's it. It feels good. Heavy Amsterdam Green here. Blend that way back up. Like so. Does it feel good to me? I think it does. I think it's really nice. That needs to soften. I think that is me for now. Just going to keep this a little bit moist a little longer, just so I can work the other sides before I start drying. So I'm just going to double gun it with a bit of heat. I'm not going to have that up too high because I don't want to burn, but it's going to heat up and dry at the same time. So what you can see me here doing is heating the paintwork up with a hairdryer and a heat gun. This is to create large cracks within the chalk paint. So at this point, I've just about blasted this nearly dry, and the fun part is watching the cracks happen, and for some reason not one single crack. I do not know why. It works so beautifully so many other times before. You can check out my page. I've done this lots of times and it's always been true to how I've just taught you. So please don't not give it a try because it does work. I think because it's exceptionally hot here today, I think the products are just melting on me. But what it has done is revealed some of the primer red. It's kind of moved around a little bit. There's lots of product gunked up in the corners. I'm just not going to worry about it. These things happen in furniture painting. The truth is I've got a nice blend. I've got the colours on the way that I like. I've just had another thought that I might do a colour wash in the fur just all over to do a little bit of wet distressing before I do any other type of distressing, which may make the paint come off because of those products, may come off in a very different way. It's just one of those things. Even the best of us will have failures with products. I'm saying failures, but I don't think it is a failure. It's just a happy accident. I was expecting really deep cracks, not one single crack. Hey ho, that's not meant to be. This piece is telling me to do something else and we're moving on from it. But please, if you followed that step by step, as I've just said in the previous part of the video, please do it. Try it on a smaller project first. You will get great results. I know that you will because I've done it many times before. So don't worry about it. And you can do it in smaller areas on a piece of furniture and then fill in. So please give it a go. Let me know how you get on. I'm gonna try and make this into the gorgeous chippy look that I really wanted. Now it's time to get really messy. I'm gonna get this really saturated with a colour wash. So onward and upwards. So there's my water. I'm just gonna take some furl and that's gonna go in there. No rhyme or reason. A little bit of Tilton as well. So we're just tinting this water. It's gonna be a tinted liquid, that's all that we're gonna do for this wash. The brush was already loaded up. I've just used that. Make sure it's well incorporated. So we've got this lovely lime sort of watery solution of chalk paint. It's like a dye really. That's gonna sit in all of those crevices, you know, around the edges of the apertures that are sticking out. And this should be nice. It should just help us loosen that paint ready to distress with a cloth. The reason I'm going to do a wet distress is sometimes we may use sandpaper, but sometimes it can be a bit scratchy, and this is a little bit more natural looking. I'm going to just take a little bit more furl in there just to add a bit more tint to that. That feels good. Make sure that when you're using your colour wash that you keep on stirring as you go along because the two things will separate again. So off we go. Just applying this colour wash. It's going to be very messy. Don't worry about where it goes. Very quickly saturate the whole piece, keeping it moving around. What you can see there now, it's gathering on this edge in there. So we're going to do the same thing to the whole front. Where it gets fun. Colour wash to one side, and we have our bucket of water with our soft cloth, and I'm going to open the cloth out. It's a nice big cloth, and we're going to take off just about as much moisture as we can take out, so it's really quite dry. And what we're going to do with it, we're going to scrunch it up, and it's a little bit like 1980s, just rag rolling. Just kind of stomping it around slowly removing some of that colour wash. It's also removing some of the paint off the surface. So this is, there's the crackle, it's coming back. This is allowing the paint to be removed in such a natural, authentic way. Keep on taking the excess off, back into the water, clean your cloth. You might have to change the water in your bucket a few times. Take as much out again, and then you can go again. See there, that's where the crackle is. It is kind of coming back. It's kind of lifting in a really lovely way. So that's just a little bit of the primer red showing just from underneath. Now, as I go down the piece, I'm allowing some of that real lovely green stuff, the pale green, to stay there. That's what I wanted, a stain in that corner. I'm just going to work on these squares a little bit more, because you'll see if I slightly rub away, you'll get some of that lovely, it's taking some of that off on the higher ground. So that's lovely. Keep working it, hold that down. So what I'm doing at the bottom is I'm trying to remove right back down to the Amsterdam Green and just leaving that in, just in the details, but meanwhile allowing some of the primer red to come back on the corners. Just neaten that all up. Just keep on taking off the excess that you don't need. Very nice. So now moving on to the side, you can see the paint's quite precarious here. So I'm going to just gently remove a little bit more down to the primer red again. I'm loving this red-green mix. It's beautiful. Yeah, there we go, look. I don't mind that. It's quite strong in that corner, but nice in a good way. Love that green. Right, these drips, you could leave the drips. It's kind of a thing, a look. But I like to just kind of soften them off, and then the odd bit, like if you really want to distress a little bit more and it's not coming off, take your dry cloth and you can rub away that little bit more. It's more of an abrasive. Once it's wet and it's going through that paint, you can get little areas that want to come off a little bit better. Like up here, I want to bring back some of the primer red. Just a slight bit peeping through there. I don't like to see too many trickles on it. I think it looks more natural. If it was a weathered outdoor piece, something like verdigris, the drips would be great. But in this case, it's meant to look like patina that's just paint that's aged old and it's faded away. So what I'm doing here is just rubbing the paint into the sides, tidying everything up. It saves me having to worry about the blend or neatening up the edges of the doors. I can keep it as is inside because it's a lovely dark wood inside. Sometimes I would most definitely paint the inside. A good colour for the inside of this might be an orange or a red again. Like so. Whilst I'm waiting for the colour wash to dry now, I'm just going to turn my hand to the handles. I'm going to paint them back dark again. I'm going to use En Fleur and maybe a little bit of Barcelona orange to create a rusty sort of handle. I think it will really pop against the green tones. So now that the En Fleur is dried, I'm just going to take a little bit of, I'm going to atomize it with water, the whole handle, and I'm just going to tap in a little bit of, this is Barcelona orange, just here and there, and I'm just going to allow that to trickle away a little bit. Don't worry about where it goes, because we can tidy that up afterwards. Just going to get it into the crevices, and then we can take our cloth from underneath and then we can just dab any excess off. It'll come back good, like so. Same on the other one, just in the crevices at the top, in those areas. It's just a little hint of colour in there. And I'll take my cloth and just tidy up. You could leave a little trickle down there. It can look really nice. I'm going to make sure mine's a little bit more cleaner than that. Just to add a little bit of orange in there. Also, another good colour to just tap in there is a bit of primer red, just here and there, not much. Just adds that rusty sort of look. And it should bring those handles a little bit more livelier against the green. Like so, on both handles. I'm just using a cloth. That's better. It's nice, that little bit of Barcelona in the crevice here. Build up, just a bit of build up. Just give it a little scripts. go, just makes them a little bit more interesting. I think that makes them look that little bit more authentically rusty, a little bit age patina on those. Alternatively, you could use some lacquer or a little bit of glue over the top and sprinkle in some cinnamon. That always looks great over hardware. I'm really happy with how this has turned out. Just that little bit more drying to go till all of this really wet paint in these crevices have dried. Maybe I will wax this tomorrow and see what we have. And if I feel it needs that little bit more distressing, I can use a little bit of 120 sandpaper just to bring back any little edge. But I'm quite happy with this. I think it looks authentically old, and the distressing parts look awesome. So I'm super happy with the way that the distressing is come out, and the handles, they look great. Final flourish, clear wax. This should bring out the lovely primer red distressing, wet distressing details. It'll also bring out the colour. Not sure whether I'm going to put any dark wax on. My urge is to put dark wax into each one of these, but probably I want to keep the piece quite fresh. If anything, minimal. But I'll know once the clear wax is on. So let's crack on with a bit of clear wax and let this piece come to life. During the waxing process, I decided not to go with a dark wax. The reason for this, I could see there was lots of textural brush strokes from layering on the paint really thickly, and I just did not want to clog that up with a darker tint, taking away from the beautiful zesty colours that remain through the clear wax. So that's it for today's project. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've enjoyed the actual tutorial, please don't forget to share and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notifications bell for future tutorials.